Martha must be a very light sleeper, Mum.
Oh, why?
When I came down this morning for the milk, his bed hardly looked slept in.
Welcome to Motor on Beep Beep. My name is Alan and this is St George's Church in Ramsgate. Forgot where I was for a second then. I'm going to find the final resting place of John the Mesurier, the actor who played the Sargent in Dad's Army. And oh, what a guy, what a lovely guy this fellow is. Honestly, he's a sweetheart. But you're going to feel a little bit sorry for him because he gets treated really badly by the women in his life. And disgrace, really, you know. I don't know how. I know human beings will have flaws, but why do people hurt other people, especially when they're nice people and soft people? They kind of get picked on, don't they? But this is John's life, and we're going to go through it and find his final resting place. John Elton Le Mesurier Halile, to give his full name, quite a mouthful, was born into a posh family. And of course that came over in the way that he conducted himself. That was his niche on screen, wasn't it? To play the frightfully English gentleman sort of thing. Whatever role he did, he was that. And he was in many films. And when John used to come in, he was like a little burst of character in the film. He was born originally into the world of the stiff upper lip and all that kind of, you know, don't show your emotions. His father was very cold towards him. His mother was very cold. I think it was only his nanny that really showed him love. And that kind of starved him of affection in the early days. And when you hear what happened to him with his relationships, you could cry buckets, really, because he was such a lovely guy. When he got to 1940, John signed up for the army, but before going in, he married his first wife, June Melville. She was equally aristocratic and sort of posh in presentation, you know. But behind all that, she was a raging alcoholic. And you wouldn't have guessed it when you see the photograph. She was a beautiful woman, but it didn't work out. When John came back from the war, he found out, you know, how bad she was. She was just totally drunk all the time. And they divorced in 1949. So it wasn't a very long marriage, unfortunately. Of course, his second relationship was very high profile. It was Hattie Jacques. Hattie Jacques of the Carry On films and, you know, Eric Sykes connection and all that sort of thing. But she was a very exuberant, loud woman. She liked to party. And John was. They were both extremely humorous people. In fact, they matched each other quite well, really. And it was a really good relationship. He had two sons, and both his sons said they were lucky to be in that relationship. It was great. Where it went wrong was, I don't think it was a very physical relationship later on. And Hattie Jacques was a very physical woman, if you know what I mean. And they had a driver. And the driver, handsome brute he was, he came along and it spoiled the relationship because Hattie started an affair with the driver. The guy was called John Schofield, and you're kind of going to find this hard to believe, but I've watched dramas about it and documentaries, and what happened was, because John was such a decent sort of guy, he hated confrontation. When the affair became known, he just basically moved out of the marital bedroom, and the driver moved into the bedroom, and poor John was left in the spare room upstairs somewhere. So he had to live in the same house as where Hattie's relationship was going on, and it was like it or lump it, and he had no choice. I mean, he had children as well, so. But he was the kind of guy that he just didn't kick up a fuss. He never caused an argument. He kind of looked for the understanding behind it, and he even wished him sort of to be happy. Amazing guy. He just didn't want conflict, and he didn't make it. But it didn't mean he was unsad. The friends who knew him said he had psoriasis all his life. That's a stress-related complaint. So beneath that calm swan exterior, he was thrashing about in turmoil and upset. and he drank and he took some drugs, and yeah, it wasn't what he appeared, but he kept up a very good front.
Lavender blue, dilly dilly. Lavender green, I'll be your king, dilly dilly. If you'll be my queen.
That was awfully good.
Was it really? I'm so glad you liked it.
You really have an excellent microphone voice.
Well, do you really think so?
Have you ever done any of this sort of thing before?
Well, as a matter of fact, I once played the White Rabbit in Alice in Wonderland when I was at school.
Really?
Yes.
So did I.
Did you really?
What school were you at?
Well, as a matter of fact,
Look,
I
can
went
we
to...
get on with this script, please?
One of the best films I saw him in was I'm All Right, Jack, 1958, and it was a great film. Peter Sellers was in it, but John Le Mesurier had a great part. He was one of the sneaky time and motion men, watching what was going on and trying to catch him, wasting time. So it's a really good role for him, and he did really good. In fact, lots of people said he was an exceptional actor, but he was so laid back. He never wanted to be the leading man in a film. He just didn't. And Hattie would push him, and he said no, he didn't want it. He did little bits in films, and he used to light the film up when he came into it, but he just didn't want. He was laid back and easygoing and wanted to enjoy his life. He didn't want the stardom. It's an enormous church. I'm just going to spin it so you can have a look. Look. There we go, look. Yeah, it's very large, isn't it? Quite imposing. Don't know where he is. It's a little stone. It was interred here, and it's a little stone. So I think it's got to be in one of the corners, but we'll find it, don't worry. So with no aspirations to be a star, he carried on, and Hattie carried on with the lover. And one of the hardest times of his life was he had to go on This Is Your Life in the midst of this relationship that had just started with the driver. And it said that people said that knew him, he was very, very upset, and it was very hard for him to appear on the screen, and they had no idea what he was going to say. Would he hint at anything, or would he say something that suggested things weren't really good between him and Hattie? But he didn't. He kept the front up for the sake of her career, and that's the kind of guy he was. And ultimately, when that relationship broke down with the driver, he had started a relationship himself, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute, which saved him because he didn't have the confidence with that woman in his life. And John actually took the hit and took the reason for the divorce to Hattie as being him being unfaithful, when he wasn't the first one. It was Hattie that has caused the problem. He just found love elsewhere while he was being left in the cold.
Well, John, I understand, and I know that you're at double risk now, of course, but I understand that you were surprised that Hattie was on time at the wedding.
Well, I must confess I am rather inclined to be a bit surprised, when Hattie arrives for anything, really, but it's purely because there's sort of a standing joke in our family. I'm one of these curious people who, for some extraordinary reason, find it necessary to get to appointments and rehearsals and things about half an hour too soon. There I am, sort of wandering about like an idiot, you see, nothing to do.
And Hattie?
Well, you see, she, I would think, sort of makes every moment, you see, count in some kind or another. Everything's terribly important when she's leaving the house or dragging out to some rehearsal of some kind. There's so many things to be done, ordinary, rather dreary, mundane things like shopping lists and maybe a fuse has gone or 101 things. But a cupboard even, for some unknown reason, might have to be turned out at the last moment. And off she goes, you see, like a whirlwind to rehearsals or whatever it may be. And how she manages to make it, I really wouldn't know, but she seems to. It would appear that she does.
So there's never a dull moment with Hattie, in fact?
No, there isn't really. I would like to say that I am eternally grateful to the way she runs the home, looks after the children, looks after me. The home comes first, really, I think I'm right in saying. But I think for somebody who is so busy all the time and so much in the public eye all the time, to do all these things is very difficult and a jolly neat trick.
Thank you, John the Mesurier.
John was a massive lover of jazz, and in 1963 he met Joan Malin in the Embassy Club and he fell for her. And don't forget, he was on his own. Hattie had her lover at this point. And yeah, I mean, he needed a woman in his life. He always made out that he couldn't do anything. He was helpless. He couldn't even make a cup of tea. And he made out women were so clever because they could cook and things like that. One of his stepson actually said years later that he believed this wasn't actually true. He said John did it in that sort of affable way to get the women to look after him. He used to say to some of the actors on the films, "What do you do with your laundry? What do I do with my laundry?" And they say, "Oh, John, we go to the laundrette down the road." And he'd say, oh, I don't think I can face that. And you know what? He'd drop his clothes around and suddenly somebody would pick them all up and go do it for him. And it was a great, I think it was an act he did from what I've heard. But it worked, and everybody loved him because he was such a nice guy. And they kind of looked after him, and that's the way he led his life, being looked after. He was a strange chap. An example was that if he didn't like something, he stopped it. One day he was going under the Hammersmith Bridge in London, and he was a terrible driver. And he just got out of the car, took the keys out, threw them on the seat and walked off. And he said, "That's it, I'll never drive again." And he didn't. John Le Mesurier was born on the 5th of April 1912. His parents were Charles Elton Hilele, a solicitor, and Amy Michelle, whose family were of the Alderney in the Channel Islands. Both families were affluent, with histories of government service work in the legal profession. From an early age, John had been interested in acting and performing. As a child, he'd frequently been taken to the West End of London to watch Ralph Lynn and Tom Walls perform in a series of farces at the Aldwych Theatre. John appeared in more than 120 films across a range of genres, normally in smaller supporting parts. John was a heavy drinker, but he was never noticeably drunk. In 1977, he collapsed in Australia and was flown home, where he was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver and ordered to stop drinking. Until then, he had not considered himself an alcoholic. He accepted that it was the cumulative effect over the years that had done the damage. It was a year and a half before he drank alcohol again, and he avoided spirits and drank only beer. Hattie Jacques claimed that his calculated vagueness was as the result of his dependency on cannabis, although according to John, the drug was not to his taste. He smoked it only during his periods of abstinence with alcohol. John's favourite pastime was visiting the jazz clubs around Soho, such as Ronnie Scott's, and he observed that listening to artists like Bill Evans, Oscar Peterson and Alan Clare always made his life seem a little bit more brighter. Towards the end of his life, John wrote his autobiography, A Jobbing Actor. The book was published in 1984, after his death. John's health visibly declined from July 1983, when he was hospitalised for a short period of time after suffering a hemorrhage. When the condition reoccurred later in the year, he was taken to Ramsgate's Hospital. After saying to his wife, "It's all been rather lovely," he slipped into a coma and died on the 15th of November 1983, aged 71. His remains were cremated and the ashes were buried in the church of St George the Martyr, Churchill, Ramsgate. His epitaph reads, "John Le Mesurier, much loved actor, resting." His self-penned death notice in the Times on the 16th of November 1983 states that he had conked out and that he sadly missed his family and friends. Anyway, so he's got a relationship with Joan, and one of his closest friends was Tony Hancock, because they worked together. They were great as comedy partners. And there's a lot of seagulls here. I think there's some food on the ground or something. And so Tony and John were extremely close. One day Tony had a problem and he needed somewhere to stay. And being the gentleman that he was, John said, come and stay with us. So he moved in with John and Joan, his new lady. But you won't believe this, but the second time round, it all happened again. Joan fell for Tony Hancock. They started a relationship behind his back. And as before with Hattie, it all happened again. He found out and he just accepted it. He didn't cause a big fuss. He wished them well, but deep inside he was in agony. Poor John, second time round. You know, what really makes this really bad is that ultimately that relationship didn't work with Joan and Tony Hancock, because he was a raging alcoholic. He had mood swings. He used to attack her. And so she left Tony, went back to poor John, started the relationship again, and whilst she was back with John, she was having an affair for the second time with Tony Hancock. And all that really stopped it was that Tony Hancock was going to Australia, where he ultimately died. Died of suicide, didn't he? And only because of that did she go back to John. But she does say on the documentaries that she loved him. But if that's how you treat somebody you love, blows me. Right, I've done a full circle, seen nothing, so I'm going to have to concentrate. We're going to go around looking at corners, because I think his stone's in the corner somewhere. So when you think about all this awful stuff that happened to poor John, you've got to feel sorry for him. He was literally one of the nicest men in the world, and he never, ever, never caused a problem for the people that he knew and cared about. And people just did it to him, didn't they? Ooh, we got a squirrel. Love squirrels, look. Can you see him there, look? There he goes. Hello. What's your name? Are you called John too? Oh, look at him, he's looking for some nuts. Where he goes, look. Up the tree he goes. Good boy. Well done. So he proposed to Joan in a little restaurant called Crumbles. And she didn't even realise he proposed, because he's so sort of affable. He said something like, I don't suppose you would take me on, would you, Joan? And she didn't realise that that was a proposal. It's only when he came back to it weeks later that he proposed to her and she turned him down. She realised what it really meant. He's such a unassuming guy. He didn't push it. He kind of assumed that she wouldn't want him. Well, poor John, I don't know. Tony Hancock said that when he knew that John knew about the relationship, he said, if only he would come and smash me in the face. But there was no way he would do that. He wasn't that kind of guy, and it made Tony Hancock feel even worse. So it should. When it finally came to the role being offered to him in Dad's Army, John the Mesurier thought this was absolutely a terrible programme. He said, who wanted to watch a load of old chaps dressed in tatty uniforms? And he just didn't see it. And I mean, okay, probably not everybody did at that time, but originally he was going to be Captain Mannering, and Captain Mannering was going to be the Sargent, which is hard to believe, isn't it? But they suddenly realised that if they swapped the roles round, of course, the Captain Mannering could look at the rather posh character who was the Sargent and feel anger, you know, being outclassed. And it was comedy genius, and the two of them worked brilliantly together. And as we know, it's now historic, isn't it? Wonderful, funny programme, and it'll never go out of date. I remember watching it when it first started. It was, to a child, it was wonderful. One day he was on the street and he said to somebody, do you know where Alcoholics Anonymous is? And they said, no, we don't, we're sorry. Why? Are you a member? And he said, no, I want to resign. Clever guy. I've found the spot now, I can see it. I know where all the little stones are. They're tucked away in the corner. So we're going to go and find it together. I'm going to spin you around because I want you to find this with me. So let's come in. It's a stone which is quite grown over now. I've seen the photographs. But it is this corner. It was tucked away right in the corner. Been past it once. Oh my goodness. Crikey, it's there, look. Can you see? Somebody has put a picture of John. That's lovely, isn't it? Well done, somebody. Well done. Okay, let's read the stone. Hello, John. Hello, mate. I watched many Dad's Armies. And you were great in the films too. You were absolutely great. I'm alright, Jack. What wonderful role. So, let's read the stone. Needs to get a bit of that away, don't we? There we are. There we are. There we are. Okay, here we go. Okay, so it says John Le Mesurier, much loved actor, 1912 to 1983, resting, quotes. And Kim Jacques Le Mesurier, 1956 to 1991. See Emperor. Yeah. Thank you, John, for all the great humour you gave us in Dad's Army and all those film parts as well. Well done, somebody, for putting the picture there. That's lovely. They've sealed it so it'll last. That's nice. That is nice, really. Wish I'd thought of that. Okay, we've come to the bit with the flower. It's not a real one, I keep saying that, but it's not. I don't like to cut real flowers because you kill them. And here we go, we're going to move in and give John a little flower. There we go, John. This is from Motorhome Beep Beep and me, Alan. Get that to go in a bit more. That's it. That's it. Perfect. Looks nice. There it is. Yeah, lovely. That's our flower. Nice. Thank you, John. Oh, he was a sweet man, wasn't he? Can you imagine a world full of John Le Mesuriers? There'd never be any wars, would there? There'd be no fighting. It'd be a much better place. He was a special man, wasn't he? Very kind. The only thing that let him down was that he was too soft. He was a little bit too kind in some ways, because he let the women, you know, kind of abuse him, didn't they, really? But there's a lot to be said for him, because he was happy with his lot. He didn't want to be a leading man. He didn't want to be rich and famous, and he was happy with his jazz club and his pianos. And we can learn a lot from that, can't we? Because to be happy with what you've got today is the answer to happiness. And if we're always striving for beauty and wealth and things we haven't got, we miss today, don't we? We don't have a lovely day. So yeah, he did a lot right. He was just a little bit soft, that's all. But a special person. So don't forget, give me a thumbs up and the comments. You know I love the comments. Please give me a comment and subscribe to the channel if you like the content. There'll be lots more coming on Motorhome Beep Beep. So from this beautiful day, me, Alan, I'll say goodbye. Take care, everyone, and be kind to each other.